welcome to this timeless journey of hope, which is something that we really all need right now with what's happening to our country and actually happening all over the world. This is an exhibition that tells the journey of Call for Peace Drum and Dance Company beginning in 1990. And we emerged through the beginnings through the Martin Luther King Coalition in Madison, Wisconsin. And from then, we took Call for Peace around the world to several different countries, performed for the Nobel Peace Prize Summit in Rome that was actually hosted by Gorbachev in 2003. We've been to Russia and Egypt and Germany, many different countries, and our basic message through Call for Peace has been sending the message that we're all interconnected and we're all part of this circle of life of all living things. And so most recently, because of the current times that we're in, we're basically showing this exhibition as an educational journey that takes you through a journey that reveals inclusion and equity and justice, moving toward a more peaceful, sustainable world, and also speaking to the solutions that are available to us today, that are available to us now, but also moving towards the future. The people that are here today to share their amazing work that they've been involved in. First is, I just want to introduce my husband, Art Shegonee. And a lot of people, if you were at the big event at Monona Terrace in January with 2,500 people showed up, which was pretty amazing, where our city stood in solidarity with becoming a sanctuary city. And Rebecca Campbell is with us, who's from the Madison City Council, and she's been really instrumental in, she wrote the resolution for the city of Madison to stand in solidarity with Standing Rock. And I really, you probably don't know this, but when Rebecca went out there, she got arrested, and she'll speak a little to it, but she also, I could see that because she got arrested and she was connected with Madison, you know, there was enough awareness where the national media, at least our ABC or NBC in Madison, started to put it on the national news. And then I saw, you know, CNN and other stations began to, so I think she was very instrumental in bringing awareness to what was happening at Standing Rock. So, and we also have with us Michael Eppolito, who did a session before this. Michael's from Boston. He's a science teacher, but he's also a national organizer. We met Michael at the Democracy Convention in Madison several years ago. And he also organizes and brings national organizations together to communicate. And we did National Occupy Conference. Michael was very instrumental in bringing that together several years ago, which was in Kalamazoo. And he's amazing with the knowledge that he is not just from what was happening before, but what is currently happening right now. So with that, I just want to make one sort of last announcement about this exhibition of A Timeless Journey of Hope, even though Michael paints a pretty horrible picture, because I just was in his last session, and so when he says what he says, you know, you were going to need some hope, big time. Anyway, so one of the things that we're bringing to light in this exhibition, try to be really brief, is we're calling attention to what is called a book called The Great Turning, and and it means, this is, it's David Corton. He started Yes Magazine. He also wrote a book called When Corporations Rule the World. In the 4th chapter, at the beginning of the 4th chapter, he refers to this Ojibwe prophecy that Art has been talking about at these national conferences and opening them up and talking about what is in this book. And this story kind of begins from the horse and buggy to the Industrial Revolution to the times that we're headed now, which is the great turning from empire to earth community. And the things that we can do, as humanity can do, in making this choice of, basically this Ojibwe prophecy says that we'll have a choice of 2 paths. And Winona LaDuke, if you know who she is, she calls the paths, one is green and one is green. And so this is kind of a journey, an exhibition that shows and reveals what this pathway looks like. What is that other path of humanity? What's it going to look like? It's going to be, it has to be inclusive of all peoples, because we're all in this together, all over the planet. And just a little note, because a lot of people don't realize this, but these 2 pictures right here are pretty amazing, because they show in 2014 the People's Climate March in New York City. 400,000 people showed up. It was in 188 countries. It was 80 blocks long. And now we're just about ready again to head to Washington, D.C. on the 29th of April. I think the 27th is the Science March. 22nd is the Science March. 29th is another People's Climate March in Washington, D.C. This trains, buses came across the country for this People's Climate March. And Art did an amazing dance the night before the march, right before calling for this unity of all peoples, right before Naomi Klein spoke at this particular talk the night before the march. And I just have to say, you know, they were thinking, oh, well, maybe we'll have, 100,000 people. And it turned out to be 400,000 people. And at the end of the march, the policeman said to Art and I, this is the longest march we've ever had in New York City. It was 6 hours long, and he said, 400,000 people, we did not have one reported incident. Just think of it. So anyway, I think in the exhibit we've included now some of the images that were at Standing Rock, and also this, just another little note, in Wisconsin, maybe some of you know, but we have the largest renewable energy fair in the country. And believe it or not, it's in a place called Custer, Wisconsin. Believe it or not. So it's only 8 miles down the road from Appleton or Stevens Point. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's in its 21st year, I think, coming up. So go to that, think about that, because it's coming up again, and it's an amazing expression of renewable energy and this pathway that we all need. So that's your little bit of hope. Remember that, especially when Michael talks. And also with us is Christa Bruhn. She's a partner with me now in crime, I think, big time in terms a peaceful crime. Others might think of it as crime. But Christa I met because she's writing a book now, From Palestine to Standing Rock. Wow. And she has an interesting perspective to say that about peace and humanity. And lastly, we've been invited to the International Network of Peace Museums, where they have a big conference every 3 years. So I didn't realize there were peace museums all over the world. And actually in Iceland they have a war and peace museum. So we want to bring a War and Peace Museum to happen in Madison, Wisconsin. So that will be part of, so we're presenting in Belfast, Ireland, April 8th through the 13th, or the 10th through the 13th. And in hopes that we can send some positive messages and through our exhibition, possibly turning into an actual peace museum. And so my name is Dawn Shegonee, and I'm the coordinator director, and my husband Art through the Call for Peace since we began in 1990. And with that, I'm going to ask Rebecca to come and speak.
Okay. You sure we don't want to get the bad news over with first?
You know, maybe that's not a bad idea. I think we should.
Do you guys think so?
I think that's a good idea.
All right.
And how many minutes have we got of bad news? Let me see here.
So, well, thank you for having me. It's always an honor to be part of this festival and working with you all. Yeah, let me kind of roll back here. So they're kind of setting you up that bad news. You know, we are facing a challenge unlike any other people before on the planet. Humankind has caused natural systems to be thwarted, which should have been causing the planet to cool, and we're experiencing record warm. You don't have to wait for your kids or grandkids. The wheels are coming off the environment now, and it's only going to get worse and worse within, you know, a decade to 15 years. There's mass social unrest that will be happening around not just food and water shortages, but millions and millions of people, tens of millions, upwards of hundreds of millions, being displaced on coastlines because of rising seas. So what does that mean? It means that, you know, we can't wait, and, you know, we can't wait for, you know, some, you know, savior leader to come and make it all go away. We, each and every one of us, has to find it within ourselves to, you know, take that leadership within us and go out in our communities, go out to our friends and families, and lead however we can. People like myself, you know, I help serve the movement, aside from just giving talks. If you want to set up a conference call, there's technology, not just regular call-in, whatever. We have conference call technology with like breakout rooms, and you can have common docs with it, and you can do all types of collaborative activities on the conference calls to be able to carry out a project or for all types of purposes. I work with many organizations. Women's International League for Peace, I'm their engineer for them. I work with Popular Resistance. I work with, and then you know, I did calls for, you know, Bernie's, you know, movement, Black Lives Matter. You go across the whole thing, and that's a part of the work I do with InterOccupy, as I did a lot of work with Occupy as well, and more. So what I'm saying is, if you know, each one of you can take that lead. It might seem like might not seem like much if each one of you did a call and had 4 or 5 people on it in your life. But count them around the room. You take, if everyone did that, you multiply that by 4 or 5. That's something going on. You bring all those calls together. Now we have a lot of people, and now we're doing something. You know, and not only that, we don't have to wait for you to do stuff. There's plenty of things that I'm involved with that I'd be glad to try to connect you with. So what I like to do is learn about what people are up to, what their interests are, what their hopes for the world of the movement, or what they're passionate about, all those things about you. And then I try to help connect you to others or organizations to kind of synergize efforts and converge. Because that's the thing. If we're going to make it through what we're facing, we have to brace for the impacts of what are coming. You know, and there's no reversing what's about to happen and happening. It's only bracing to get through it. And so what we need mass scale action of World War II style transformation of the economy to green sustainability. In 2009, the Institute of Energy Research did a report saying that sustainability would create 17.4 million real jobs. This makes sense from an economic level. It definitely needs to happen on an ecological level. And in doing so, what we really have to plan for, and you know, a place like Wisconsin with all your farming is probably better suited than other places. Local food production, food storage, you know, drying and pickling, because the changing climate is going to be affecting the ability to grow crops. There's a graph I'm going to be showing my next session where, you know, within the century, you know, Fargo, North Dakota will be having a climate like Phoenix at its current trajectory. So, you know, this is what we're moving into. So, so with all that, there are some other hopeful things, and I just want to say, people are mobilizing and realize that the root of all of this is corporate power, and you know, power outside of democracy. The billionaires, the bankers, and the big corporations. Okay, so one way we can really cut that power down, start chopping it down, and free the media at the same time, is by securing an amendment to the Constitution that says corporations are not persons and do not constitutionally held rights. Money is not speech, and campaign finance can be regulated on the state, local, and federal level. Now, the current administration, Congress, that's not going to happen through them, but through a process in the Constitution called an Article 5 Convention, that very well could be possible. And 5 states have called for it, 17 states have voted for non-binding referendums, 17 states supporting it. And imagining, even if we have something like an Article 5, that's not a formal one, but to start building that, we're live streaming this. This is capacity building what we're doing, this live streaming, to try to have conferences like this, go out to the country. There's a satellite event right now happening in Boston that my fiance is running, you know, through as a part of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And it also doesn't, it allows us to not have a carbon footprint either. But trying to get as many of the citizenry involved in this dialogue, and I will say, and I said this in my last session, having, you know, First Nations people, Native American people, being the ones who hold the space and facilitate the conversation, to be there as we are, the citizenry now, trying to wrestle with these issues and take steps forward, I think is what really should be done. Because it's those people who, you know, really tended to the land, thinking 7 generations ahead, and the irony is they were called the savages. But who is really savage, right? And even right now, who's on the front lines of the struggle with pipelines and such, right? So this is, I think they play a very important role, and we should be everyone should be working with them, you know, and however we can, and supporting their needs, right, first. So we do, you know, it's monumental what we're facing, and I think that, you know, to see, no matter what happens, to see people working together, coming together, and helping one another, knowing that what we're facing, be it now. Imagine in the future, this, you know, say we do have the social transformation and everything, you know, becomes, you know, what we want to see, and we live in balance with the ecosystem. Let's just imagine that does happen, right? And we have a fair and just society. How would you be treating each other? What would that look like? And I put forward to you all, let's start doing that now. Let's start acting like that to one another now. Let's start relating to each other like that now. And even in some small way, we can start realizing that and continue to grow our influence, grow the people we connect with, and just be the change. I know that's cliche, but that's what we really have to do, is start being that, living that, and working towards that. And there's lots of ways we can do that. I'd be glad to connect with you more about that. Thank you very much.
Well, that wasn't so bad.
You were in the last session.
and first of all, I do want to acknowledge and honor that we are on the traditional and ancestral land of the Ho-Chunk people. And that land, and I'm from Madison, and that land was, stolen, and many, many ceremonial and sacred sites were destroyed in order to build that city. And, I just want us to just think about that for a second and think about how do we even begin reparations? How do we begin reparations for something like that? And my even saying that and you listening to this is, I think that's a beginning. That is a beginning. We have to start from there. So, boy, you said so much that I wanted to respond to. And one of the things you said, Mike, was about how we have to start where we are. And when was it, 2003, I made a big choice in my life to bail out of an academic career in favor of, to earn my living as a taxi driver. And I did that because I felt I didn't just understand intellectually with all the facts about the ecological and social crises we were in and how they were going to get worse, but I really felt it in my heart, and I felt that that my life force was way more vital to having an impact on others around me than I could have working in this huge University of Wisconsin institution that, I'm not going to characterize it. But I felt that instead of struggling within that institution, I could do so much more working at a taxi co-op, which is a worker cooperative. I felt that I could do so much more forwarding and building the worker cooperative movement, which is a movement based on people's economic self-determination. Because I saw and I felt and I understood that the financial, the political, and many of the government institutions were really failing people, were failing humanity, are failing humanity. And that the only way to struggle against that is to come together as people and to build our own economic institutions, social institutions, political institutions that are centered around care for each other and care for the land and the water. So my life has been, since 2003, sort of on that trajectory. And then Scott Walker, Citizens United happened, and then, the fallout from Citizens United was this semi-fascist Republican regime that we've been living under for 6 years in Wisconsin. And it was, I'm just assuming that most of us are from Wisconsin. I've been dealing with this for 6 years, so it was shock. It was a shock and awe. And I worked as a journalist for the Progressive, and a couple of years into seeing the really ugly, ugly ways in which this socially regressive and really destructive, I kind of call it a death machine, was taking hold of our state institutions that had once been so progressive and so organized around protecting people, protecting vulnerable people, protecting the water, protecting the land, how quickly that could just turn when corporations took control of power at the state level. It was really scary, and now the rest of the country is really starting to feel that shock too. So working as a journalist, I saw a lot of the ugly workings of how this worked, and I kept thinking, how are we going to protect each other in community? How are we going to protect our water? I live on the north side, right near Cherokee Marsh, and that's that's the headwaters of what defines that region, the 4 Lakes region. And in 2015, 2014, I decided to run for local office because I saw, my analysis was that, okay, corporations and the profit motive had control of our national government and our state government, but it doesn't have control of our local governments yet. And that there is a lot of space for people to organize and be active within school boards, school districts, county and city governments. In fact, that's how the Tea Party really started to build their grassroots power, is working at that level. But when we're in small enough units of population where we know each other, we confront each other face to face, we have kids in the same school, we shop at the same places, we go to the same Badger basketball games, whatever, that it becomes much more difficult to oppress people and to really force people to do things that are against life, that are against their own interests. So that's what I decided to do. And so I've been in office for 2 years. And as Dawn said, last summer, I learned about the Sacred Stone Camp last summer, back in June or July, and then I saw the runners, the youth runners, running to Washington, D.C. And I think it was August 15th, David Archambault II, the chairman of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, put out a call worldwide for tribal units of government and other units of government not to send money or people or anything, but to express solidarity. That was his call. Please express solidarity with us. He wasn't asking for even money or people. He just said, we need to know that you're out there. The world needs to know how important protecting the water is to everyone. And the response he got was phenomenal. I think over 500 tribal governments made resolutions. And then I worked with a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation to write our resolution for the city of Madison. And later we wrote, we've been celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day in Madison since 2005, and we did another resolution for that. So as it turned out, I went out to Standing Rock on that weekend before Indigenous Peoples Day because my uncle was having a 90th birthday in the Twin Cities, and we went out to that and then drove to Standing Rock. And my intention was just to deliver the framed parchment of our city's resolution expressing solidarity with Indigenous resistance to the Dakota Access Pipeline. And the morning, it was October 10th, Indigenous Peoples Day, and that morning there were 2 ceremonies, or probably, there was always so many ceremonies happening at camp, but that morning there was a sunrise water ceremony at camp, and then there was to be an eagle and condor ceremony, which was based on an ancient Incan prophecy of the tribes from the north uniting with the tribes from the south. And there was going to be a ceremony including youth from Argentina and people from the Arctic Circle conducting their dances on a site that had been excavated for the pipeline, and the pipes were on the side of the site, but they hadn't been installed yet, and that ceremony was going to take place there. So I went out there and joined P.K. Hamill, who was an attorney. She was working for the National Lawyers Guild, and I was serving as legal observer at that ceremony with my camera. And so I was there to film police interaction. I was not there to film the ceremony. I was there to film the police interaction with people should that occur. There were no police there. The ceremony happened and was one of the most profound experiences that I've ever, it literally silenced a crowd of 400 people, and it's out there on the plains. It gives me a tingle in my spine remembering the sounds, especially of the northern people doing their very mournful ceremony and dance about their path to get there. And it just echoed and echoed and echoed. And it was very profound. And the ceremony concluded, people were leaving, and that's when the police came, including Wisconsin State Patrol, Dane County Sheriffs, Marathon County Sheriffs, St. Croix County Sheriffs were present there to kettle people in, to prevent people from leaving the site, so that North Dakota law enforcement on the Hill could pick people up and say, arrest that, arrest that, arrest that one. So I had a bright green National Lawyers Guild hat on, and I was standing back off to the side because there had been people ready to do civil disobedience sitting under a teepee structure, and I was poised to just have my camera filming the potential arrest of those people. And then a line of North Dakota cops comes in and just yelled, if we touch you, you're under arrest. And and I didn't know, no one gave an order to disperse, even though people were dispersing. We're trying to disperse, but the Wisconsin cops were not letting people disperse. And there was a guy with a rifle up on the road pointing out people. And he said that again and then ran at me. It was a North Dakota cop. He ran at me, grabbed my hand, my camera, wrenched it behind my back, and just handled me in kind of in a very rough way. And I was arrested and charged with criminal trespass, engaging in a riot, destruction of evidence, because behind my back with my camera, I was, turning it off and closing it. So that was apparently destruction of evidence. Then they took my camera and threw it on the ground. They destroyed the evidence, and also resisting arrest. So 27 of us were arrested that day, and I spent the night in jail, strip searched, left without socks or blankets or even food for a very long time. And I tapped into just the tiniest current of what the people of that land have been experiencing for hundreds of years. The kind of brutality and oppression and disrespect and really fear. And there were some Native women in jail who were there on drug charges when we got there. And all they could talk about was their children and how they missed their children. And they were doing, whatever kind of version of ceremony they could do in jail. And it gave me so much hope. We're talking about hope. And sadness, like a very sad kind of hope, that despite the genocide, despite the oppression, despite the hundreds of years of just atrocious behavior against not just individuals but entire cultures, they still have ceremony. And that ceremony is coming back out into the world in many ways. So what you said, Mike, about the Indigenous people holding space, they're not just holding space, they have the ceremonies to heal all of us. And whatever we do, I understood this back in 2011 at the first mining bill hearing, when Marvin Defoe from Red Cliff was speaking his 3 minutes at this hearing that was just a dog and pony show. But I understood at that time he was talking about speaking for the things that didn't have a voice, speaking for the living spirit of Ichigami, speaking for the trees and the swimming ones and the four-leggeds and the birds, and that they're women, that it is their responsibility to care for the water. And right then I just knew the most important thing I can do to protect the water is to support the grandmothers in their ceremony. In this part of the world, there's tens of thousands of Anishinaabe women who still have ceremony, who do ceremony daily in protection of the water. And I just wanted to mention that Grandmother Josephine, who has walked around the Great Lakes, I don't know how many times she's done, how many tens of thousands of miles she has walked up and down rivers, around the Great Lakes, in ceremony, I'm looking this up, is doing what she says is going to be her last water walk for the Earth and Water Walk 2017 West to East. She's leaving April 20th from Duluth and walking around the southern route around the Great Lakes and up the St. Lawrence Seaway, and will end up in Quebec later in the summer. And you can look it up, For the Earth and Water Walk 2017, to see how you can support that or join her. They welcome other people to join. So thank you all very much for being here and for keeping the faith and keeping the fight.
This is Christa Bruhn, and I just also wanted to say you need that?
I just want my water.
I also wanted to just make a note that we also want to thank Karen Osborne Pope, who's sitting back here. She's from the Women's International League of Peace and Freedom. So with you that are in Boston, we appreciate you doing this today, and with Michael and Art and Rebecca, because we're partnering in this effort. Since we've been kind of connecting around nationally and internationally, the Women's League is a wonderful place to get engaged. Men are involved with the International League also, and Michael is one of the guys that helps to bring people together in that. So I want to give thanks to the Women's International League of Peace and Freedom.
Good afternoon, I'm Christa Bruhn. Thank you all for coming today to this wonderful gathering of minds and spirits and hearts. I would like to echo Rebecca's comment about the importance of just being aware of the land that we live on. I grew up in Detroit, and as a child that grew up in a city that had just been torn apart by race riots in '67, I was very aware of the divisions in this country, the privilege and the marginalization of particularly black and brown people in our country. And I was very aware of living in a place that once was inhabited by Native Americans exclusively, and who did not willingly move elsewhere. And so when Detroit was declared Detroit and it became the city that it has become, and then I witnessed not witnessed, but lived in the legacy of that race-torn situation. That's the context under which I grew up. And, I grew up in the city, public schools, no paper, no books, it was just a really, you could not help but realize that there's more than one America. In fact, there are several. And depending on who you are and where you grew up, what your skin looks like, and even then, you have access or no access to certain opportunities and resources. And it's with that awareness that I kind of launched myself into the world. And going to college, I studied abroad in Germany. I had the chance to go to Palestine. I jumped on it. I was a student of international studies during the Cold War. And for me, going to Palestine was like seeing the Cold War, like the most contentious part, the middle of the world, where the East and the West were fighting for control and access to resources. And that became my life. I was studying it. I married a Palestinian. This is one of my 3 children in the back standing. My son Campbell, who's named after Mount Carmel on the Mediterranean Sea in Haifa, which is now in Israel. And so that transformation of then living as a mother of 3 Palestinians in the United States, but also traveling repeatedly to Palestine, I had a really strong awareness of access to land and water and resources and dignity. And so, growing up in Detroit, Flint, Michigan is not far away. It wasn't too long ago that we heard of the poisoned waters of Flint, Michigan, and to this day people are still having to buy bottled water. And so when I found out about a rally in Madison, Wisconsin for Standing Rock, and of course the uniting message was water is sacred, I couldn't help but be drawn to that for reasons of where I'm from, for reasons of who I have become as the mother of 3 Palestinians. So I showed up at that rally, and that was again another transformative event where I felt called to go to Standing Rock, which I did over Thanksgiving weekend, last Thanksgiving. And as a former restaurateur in Madison, I have many hats. The Shish Cafe was our family restaurant for many years, and I declared myself, available to take Palestinian food and other donations from friends and family and organizations in Madison and cook for Standing Rock for a full 5 days. So I want to share a couple of stories with you, one from Standing Rock particularly. So I went there to cook, and I did, but I also participated in a silent women's prayer march. And so about 400 women gathered to Indigenous and non-Indigenous women to, in silent prayer, march through the camp and to the Backwater Bridge, which is the bridge where the, you know, riot police and the military vehicles were all positioned to keep the camp residents, if I will, from, you know, going past that bridge and going closer to the pipeline, the Dakota Access Pipeline planned route. So it was the week before that. You may remember in the news if you heard about protesters or water protectors, as we call them, being shot with water cannons. It was a Sunday in the middle of the night, you know, through a course of events of people there trying to open access to the town of Bismarck. And they were met with water cannons and rubber bullets, and many people suffered hypothermia. And it was the Sunday after that this Women's March took place. So basically, here I am with, and I chose to go to the front line of that march as a non-Indigenous woman, to link arms with other women and to encircle a group of Native women elders in order to safely deliver them to that backwater bridge so they could do ceremony. Rebecca mentioned the importance of ceremony, to do ceremony at the bridge. And we did march through that bridge. There were a few veterans there, Native veterans. This is before the thousands of veterans came the very next week in solidarity with Standing Rock. And we came up to the bridge, and in silence we went right up to those riot police and kneeled down in silence and allowed those Native elders to go forward. And really it was a beautiful moment. You know, it was obviously, we had been warned that we could be arrested. I was supposed to be back home the next day and get my daughter to school, but I decided that I had to be at that front line. So I joined these other women, and the Native women were able to do ceremony. And not only were they able to do ceremony on that bridge, but the riot police actually opened the barricade for them. And they were able to proceed down to the north side of that section of the Campbell River and do ceremony at the river and come back. And we all returned safely with no incident. And the men of the camp literally bowed down to us to illustrate that we do have the possibility of peaceful interaction. And part of that is how do we carry ourselves, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But this experience that I had really reminded me of something that I experienced previously in Palestine when my son Campbell was only 2.5 years old, and he and his brother were going to school in Palestine, and I was working at their school, which was a newly established Arab American school near the city of Jenin. And there was one day, they're already at school because they rode the bus, and I came to go at around 10 o'clock to show up for work, which is when I'm supposed to be there. And there's a section of the road that is the only road that leads to this area that was closed. And there are two roads, actually, in that area where normally if one is closed, the other one's open. And the reason they close these roads, the Israeli army, is to do shooting practice. And so I'm very aware that here I am coming up to this intersection, and I can't get to work, and my kids are over there, I'm thinking of that too. And meanwhile, a long line of cars is forming behind me. And it's clear that the line is not moving. And so in that moment, you know, sometimes you just follow your gut. My gut told me to get out of the car and go ask the soldiers what's going on. And so I was politely told that the road is closed and I need to turn around and go back where I came from. And and in that moment, you know, here I am talking to an Israeli soldier who has a perfect American English accent. And so you know, and he has his M16 on his shoulder and his, you know, his helmet and full gear, steel-toe boots. And you know, I said, well, first I just talked about the roads. There's two roads, you know, why are they both closed? Well, we need the whole area today. It's not safe. You can't pass. And I said, well, you know, I have to get to work. And he said, you have to, you can't today. And anyway, I just, I first kind of just said, oh, so where are you from? You know, because we're speaking English, you know. And he says, California. And I said, oh, my sister lives in California. And, you know, we're just chatting. And then I said, you know, you can open the road. I know that you can open the road. I said, I have somewhere I need to be. All these people have somewhere to be. haven't you ever had somewhere you need to be? And in that moment, I just looked him in the eye. So no longer am I whoever I was to him, and no longer was he this armed Israeli soldier, but I addressed him as a human being. And I looked into his eyes, and when I asked him that question, I saw something shift in him. It's like his whole uniform melted away. And he got on his walkie-talkie, and he went and spoke Hebrew with his, fellow soldiers. And he came back and he said, "It's your lucky day. We're going to open the road." and I said, "Well, what do you mean open the road?" He said, "We're going to let you pass." And I said, "What do you mean let me pass?" He said, "We're going to let you pass." And I said, "Well, what about all these people behind me? They have somewhere to go too." And he looked at me like, how ungrateful. So, but he did get back on his walkie-talkie. I'm not going to, draw out the story too much. But the point is, in that moment, he was able to go back and discuss again. And that day, it doesn't happen every day. And of course, if I were a Palestinian, the story would be very different. I may have been shot on sight. I may have been arrested, disappear, whatever. But I knew, as an American, at least in that moment, that I could ask that question, or that I could stand up to that soldier, and not in a confrontational way, to get back to what I was talking about with Standing Rock, but to just appeal to his humanity, much the way that we did in Standing Rock with the Women's March. And so I tell you those two stories because in this time where I feel like the whole nation has completely divided, like the Red Sea or something, and we have really people who are clearly, having their own. I'm a writer, right? So I think of things in story. So when I look at Israel and Palestine, we have two narratives of the Jewish state and of Palestine. In Detroit, there's the whole racial history. There's also the history in the country, in Detroit and elsewhere, of a Native American presence here, and we all know what came after. So there are always these competing narratives, and yet what I've come to realize is that we're really two sides of the same coin. And I say that not lightly because I think it's much easier to say I'm me and you're you, and we don't get along. But if I really believe that, I couldn't have talked to the soldier and expected a different outcome. I don't think the Women's March could have gone to the Backwater Bridge and reached out to those riot police and armed guards and gotten the result that we did. And so I encourage all of us, to branch out beyond the familiar and the comfortable in your conversations, in your interactions, and don't get tripped up by the belief that we don't get along or that we aren't all, at the end needing the same things in this world. Tomorrow when, what Michael has addressed, when we're all faced with the crisis of water and land and growing food or whatever it is that we're going to be faced with, or already faced with, we are going to have to find common ground. And the sooner we work at that, the more promise we have of getting there. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, or that there aren't going to be disagreements, or that people are going to just stay who they are and never come together. But in my own experience, I have found that against all odds, you really can find common ground. And unless we work to do that, and unless we are very clear about what unites us, is that need for human dignity. It's the need for me to be as respected as you are, or you. It means that if I deserve clean water, you do too. And if you don't, then we have a problem. The minute you elevate someone's needs over others, you're going to have conflict.
So we're going to get the cowbell here, I think, any second.
Okay.
And so I would really like my husband Art to be able to do a somewhat of a little closure here, but even if the bell rings, the cowbell comes, if you could just remain here for a few more minutes for Art to do there it is. Yeah.
Are you going to come up here? Or?
Sometimes it's real loud. No, I think you'll just sit.
Okay.
Also, these are pictures of Art here. Recently at the, he danced for a big tribute to Johnny Cash at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Bill Miller is a Native artist, three-time Grammy Award-winning American artist, and Art was dancing at this big week-long tribute to Johnny Cash, and I just have to say, Johnny Cash was out at Wounded Knee. He was a real activist. The song that Art danced to was called Battle. What was it? Of Ira Hayes. The Battle. Anyway, he was one of the men that stuck the American flag in the ground, the famous picture in World War II, and he was a Native American, he was a Pima Indian Native man. And in that song, it even speaks to the water. So, my husband, Art.
I want to say thank you to all of you for being here. Welcome to my country.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. And all these things that are happening to us, you know, we're all in this together, and we can get through this. And I want to thank my sisters here for all the hard work that they've done. And Michael too, thank you. You know, and I want to say too that maybe we need this to wake us up. Maybe we've been sitting on our laurels too long. Maybe we need to do this to shake us up to a reality check of what's going on for us. That we thought it was okay. We just oh, it's good. We're gonna let somebody else do it. We're gonna let somebody else do it. Well, time is here. It's not let somebody else do it. It's now get off your ass and do it yourself. You know, it's not the other person's problem. It's come to your front door. It's our front door now. And we have to all get up. And now you get to feel what we as Native Americans have been feeling for a long time. I don't like to put it that way, but it's true. You know, and we as Native American people have been giving and telling people what's been going to happen, what's going to happen. And all we want to do is we want peace, balance, and harmony. That's all we've ever wanted. We've helped you, we've taught you, we've shown you, we've given you our land, we've given you food, clothing, direction, and look what happened. You keep taking and taking and taking. I just recently went out to Skunk Hill to put tobacco on my grandparents' graves and told them I'm sorry for what's happened, for what this world has come, and I will try to make it better by making better relationships with my brothers and sisters. So I want to leave you with that. Thank you very much, my women.
One more message of hope. I just want to express one last message of hope. Art speaks many times to this Ashke Abama Zane, and it says, when the water turns to poison and you no longer can eat the fish, a new people will emerge, and they will have this choice of two roads. And so one road is sustainable and one is unsustainable. So wherever Art has gone and wherever we've gone in these past 4 or 5 years, he's basically let people know you're part of a new people that is emerging and has been for probably the last 20 years. So you're the people that are waking up and realize what this road is all about. And it's going to take humanity and a new people that are aware to travel down that path. Thank you.
Well, it was nice talking to you guys.